Right, I'll just call our workshop to order. Today's workshop, open workshop, is one that we've all been looking forward to actually receiving, and certainly some really interesting reading in the papers that you provided us. But look, without any further ado, I will pass the speaking paddle over to Gary and to Kirsty. Obviously, we've got the documents in front of us, but the floor is yours.
Thank you, Worship. So Kirsty's really helped frame this, and inevitably when Kirsty helps prepare notes for me to present, I go off piste a little bit. So staying on piste. So today's workshop is really about letting everyone know what an anchor institution is, why I think we should be developing an anchor institution framework for Waipa. Where does it fit within all of the stuff we've done to date, and what does that look like? So what are the key components of an anchor institution we've not done yet? And then to provide an opportunity for you folks to have a discussion and feedback, because you're representing the community and there are elements of this you might not like, and there are elements you might want us to take a little bit further. And then we'll give you a bit of a glimpse. Kirsty's been doing some work, and she went to the ICMA conference this year and picked up a bit of intel from what's happening overseas. And so we'll just give you a glimpse of what one of these councils looks like, and you could easily adapt some of the components of that for Waipa. And then we'll just talk about next steps. Sorry. So anchors are usually really large scale. They have a long-term and enduring commitment to place. Councils are here for the long haul. We've got a vital role to play with communities and economies, and often they combine those characteristics we've got up there. We're large-scale employers, major purchasers, control substantial land holdings, assets, and generally they're not for profit, although some private sector institutions can come along for the journey, especially if they wish to help us deliver outcomes that we're trying to seek, and also for those big contractors where we might let work to and we can influence them to deliver some of the outcomes we're seeking to deliver, particularly in the job market and the environmental space. Generally, they include places like universities, schools. So locally, we'd have the University of Waikato, the Wānanga, corrections, other councils, and potentially schools as well. Thanks, Kirsty. So anchors aren't a new concept, and the genesis of the sort of anchor institution framework was in the States, particularly in the health sector, and you'll get a background for that sort of work from Peter McKinley, but also then into the UK, where particularly as councils moved away from being large infrastructure providers into providing the four well-beings, the social, cultural, environmental, and economic well-beings. So it's really about creating value for the local community, and we're sort of thinking that particularly as the Three Waters moves in to the New Zealand context, it's going to leave a significant gap. And if you think about everything we've done over the years, both as central government and local government, in the interest of efficiency, it tends to mean that the big guys win the contracts. The gaps between the haves and the have-nots increase. And in many cases, a lot of the money we spend go outside of the district and sometimes outside of the country. And so in the interest of efficiency, you look at particularly a lot of the smaller rural provincial towns where they've closed down post offices, police stations, courthouses, Ministry of Ag and Fish, we all have one of those offices. So not only have those services gone in the interest of efficiency, but the people who make up those communities disappear as well. And so gone are your members of boards of trustees, Lions clubs, people who are the fabric of your community. So there's a downside to efficiency, and in many cases, anchor institutions look to address that. Thanks, Kirsty. So why Waipa? What does the future look like, and why are we doing this? We can learn a lot from overseas jurisdictions. As I worked with the Future of Local Government panel to paint a picture of local government, where there really seemed to be a hole in what we do in relation to delivering on the four wellbeings for which we're statutorily responsible. We play well in the infrastructure space, but a whole bunch of that stuff is going. So what do we do for social, cultural, economic and environmental wellbeing in a real sense? So a large part of that is about building on that and making Waipa a more livable place for its community. So let's just try it all together. And I just wanted to sort of sell the why proposition to you. So if we look at how we do stuff, the planning context for New Zealand local government is really messy. So in the environmental space and infrastructure planning space, you've got the Resource Management Act, where you've got statements of national policy, you've got regional policy statements, you've got regional plans, you've got district plans, and all of that stuff has to be consistent, but it's got to go through a Schedule 1 process. And inevitably, to pull a district plan together takes you about 5 years. Imagine keeping that stuff consistent. Then when it comes to land transport, you've got the National Land Transport legislation, you've got the National Land Transport Plan, you've got the Regional Land Transport Plan. And to give effect to that, you often fall down into implementation through district plan designations and changes, your asset management plans, activity management plans, and you cut resources through the Local Government Act. And in many cases, you're relying on significant subsidy from central government. When it comes to the serious resource allocation, you've got your processes through the Local Government Act, that's your long-term plan and your plan processes. But none of that is connected with the regional government's long-term planning process or central government's appropriations process. So you can see you've got this really discombobulated framework for planning and how we do stuff. And it's quite difficult to keep control of the policy puzzle. So I just want to talk now about process. And so notwithstanding that local government has powers of general competence, that is, if we go through the right process, we can pretty much do anything we like in the interest of bettering our community. If you look at the Resource Management Act process, it's all about Schedule 1, where people get to be involved in pre-district plan or district plan change consultation processes. They get to be involved in a submissions process, a further submissions process, and an appeals process. And for the average person in the street, it's very daunting. Just consider the waste to energy plant and how our community feels about getting involved in that process, and that's just a resource consent. Equally, when it comes to our special consultative procedures, whether they're bylaws or whether they're LTPs, if we think about the LTP where we're looking to spend something in the order of $2 billion over 10 years, we go out with a special consultative procedure. People have got 20 days to make a submission. There's a hearing where people get to rock up for 5 minutes and 2 months later they'll get a decision, but because there are often 2,000 decisions to make, it's relatively clipped. No wonder our communities feel disenfranchised by the sorts of processes we're running. But in my view, it gets a bit worse than that, because elected governors, you folk, become governors of a process as opposed to governors of outcomes. And there's a tremendous amount of power put in the hands of the bureaucracy because we manage the process. And I get a sense that we need to try and tip the scales a little bit more in favour of the governors of the communities and the communities themselves. So a bit of this is about having a close look at the processes we follow in the interests of getting more engaged with our communities. Come in Ahuaki. And now Ahuaki is our community spatial plan. It aims to look at all of the community outcomes we're trying to drive. It sits within our strategic context. It looks to cut across issues like the special consultative process, the RMA process. It looks to get closer to the communities. It looks to allow you folk to get closer to your community so we can understand the outcomes they're trying to drive. And if we land a really good spatial plan, which is all about resource allocation into the future, then under those circumstances, you've got certainty with what you want to go ahead with. And that stuff under the Resource Management Act, Land Transport Act and the Local Government Act really just become an implementation mechanism because you have a clear end goal in mind. So a lot of what Ahuaki is about is trying to put everything our community wants and everything we've done well into a corral. That's the nub of which your engagement is made and the decisions you make around resource allocation is made. So I just want to move now to, so why Waipa as an anchor? We deliver a whole range of goods, from private goods, non-exclusive, non-rival roads, parks and reserves. If someone uses them, it doesn't preclude others from using them. They're what you call non-rival, non-exclusive. Right through to private goods, you know, you apply for a building permit, you get it, that's your widget, we process it, you pay the full cost. And then there's a whole bunch of products we deliver in the middle, they're called merit goods. And there's a bit of private good and a bit of public good in there, but it's really complex because we've got to figure out who pays for what. Take borrowing a library book. I mean, I think the average library book costs about $7 for us to process something in that order. Yet, if we charge $7 per library book, I suspect no one would borrow a library book, or very few would, and you'd have a lot less educated community. So it's up to you to try and make those decisions around where the balance fits. So lots of goods, private, public, lots of in-betweens. Our operating costs are something in the order of $100 million annually, and our capital costs are generally range between 1 and 200 million annually. 50% of our revenue, or approximately that much, comes from rates, and we have to work really hard to garner the remaining money. We have about 400 contracts in the interests of contracting out and doing things more efficiently. Since the early 90s, we've contracted a lot of stuff out. And so if a member of the community wants to complain about a service, often they're referred to a contractor. If you take a town like Pirongia, we've got separate contracts for mowing, for cleaning toilets, for graffiti, for emptying bins. And you often think, wouldn't it be nice to have people who are caretakers of that place as opposed to a disparate range of contractors? So we have about 400 contracts. If they were to run their term, that would be a total spend of around $250 million over the term of those contracts. We've got about 350 full-time equivalent staff, and we have assets valuing $2.4 billion. So we're a massive enterprise in a Waipa context. And how can we leverage all of that muscle for the best interest of our community, as opposed to the picture I've painted around the way in which we plan, the way in which we govern, and the way in which we deliver? So Ahuaki is all about resource allocation. That's what spatial plans do. It's integrated with our strategic framework. So those are the social, cultural, environmental, and economic frameworks, all the stuff we've agreed, we've engaged with the community, and we've cemented that stuff in. We've amended our procurement processes to look at, as much as possible, buying local. At least if you're going to buy local and you're going to pay a premium, you've got your eyes open when you do that. There are some cases when you'd say, no, that's too expensive. We need to stay with a bigger contractor who can perhaps deliver a service more cost efficiently. But at least we're giving the small guys, the local guys who used to rely heavily on this council for an income, we're giving them a fighting chance. We've also run past you a new framework for looking at Section 17A of the Local Government Act. So when we look at how we deliver a service, we must consider whether we deliver it in-house or whether we contract it out. Those are the 400 contracts that I talked about. And so when you think about Waipa District Council as an anchor and forming a role of an anchor, there are probably a few of those contracts that you've put out that you might want to bring back in-house. So we've put a fresh lens on that for you to look at within the Ahuaki context. The way in which we do stuff is perhaps the most exciting bit about anchor institutions. And so we've dipped our toe in the water with participatory democracy. And you would have got a sense about the way in which we use that through the World Cafe process. And there are a bunch of other processes that we can use. We're having Waikato University prepare a paper on how well we did through that process and whether we achieved the outcomes. And it becomes a wonderful seeding ground for people to get more interested in local government and even potentially standing for election in the future. The next cab off that rank would be participatory budgeting. Now councils in Scotland might say they have to allocate 2% of their budget, I think it's 2%, might be 1%, through a participatory budgeting process, so that whereas you're quite clear about the outcomes you want to achieve in a local community, say Pirongia, instead of having a grants process where we sit down and arbitrarily work with sort of policies and processes and put money out for, you know, events and those sorts of things, you would engage with the Pirongia community and say, well, we've got this amount of money to dedicate to the outcomes you want to achieve. How can we work with you to spend that money? So it's flipping the sort of grants process on its head. I guess the other thing to be very aware of is that our external communications process becomes critical, because this isn't just about council delivering outcomes, it's about us partnering with other anchors. And so we've already opened discussions about this framework with execs from other councils, with Taitawara on my community wellbeing committee down there, and we're talking about this sort of framework for councils going into the future. But look, I think we're really well placed with Ahuaki. I think we're well placed with many of the building blocks we've put in place, and there's a whole bunch of stuff we can do in the future to make it even better. So that's enough from me.
Thank you.
Time for you.
You did great. Considering you stuck to the script kind of. Okay, so where does this fit within our strategic planning framework? This is just depicting the words. It will be designed at a point where we finalise the changes that need to be made. But essentially, as you're aware, we're here to ensure that we successfully deliver on our council vision and community outcomes. It's all about building connected communities. So those sit at the top of our framework, and then recognising that Ahuaki, once adopted, will become our key strategic planning document, and it will drive everything that we as an organisation do in terms of our future planning, our prioritisation and investment, ultimately resulting in the delivery of services, projects and initiatives on the ground. We're then proposing that the anchor institution framework sits immediately below that. The reason being that together they will then work to drive our future work through the organisation. I think it's fair to say that we're not talking about starting with a blank canvas. Much of this is already well advanced and underway. This framework that we're proposing be developed is trying to pull that together so that we can ensure it's effectively implemented, that we're monitoring and reporting on progress. So this is just then you'll see the external strategic priorities. These are the ones that have been shaped through the development of the 24-34 long-term plan. And then sitting below that, the subject matter specific strategies and plans, as well as then with that internal focus, what we want our people to be focused on, the values that we want them to give effect to as they go about their daily work. So you've been provided with some supporting information, and I just want to acknowledge the input from Joy, our new Economic Development Advisor, who has shared her thinking, and we've had some robust discussions. Joy and her role will be critical to the successful implementation of the Anchor Institution framework moving forward, as will team members from across the organisation. So really what we're doing here is identifying the key component parts to the framework, and there is a lot of detail that sits below it, some that's already in progress and more that will be developed once we hear your feedback. Starting with the one at the top there, community assets and infrastructure. So this is about utilising our land, buildings, community facilities to enhance community wellbeing, working with organisations and entities within our community to provide, for example, more affordable housing, so partnering with the likes of Kāinga Ora and other non-governmental organisations, utilising our buildings to work with community groups to provide programs, clubs, societies, a space to be able to better connect with the community. And ultimately, what results from that is an increase in community wellbeing, encompassing all of the full wellbeing, social, cultural, economic and cultural. Procurement, this is an area that we are well advanced in. As you're aware, work has been undertaken in terms of the development and implementation of a comprehensive procurement strategy, policies and processes, prioritising the local spend, use of the local workforce, partnering with iwi, by way of example, Waikato Tainui, through our joint management agreement, have developed up a work program with a particular focus on social procurement, partnering with Māori-based businesses, but also looking at opportunities through Matawai and others. And really we see that there are opportunities here to partner with other anchors, those that are public organisations and business entities, through the work that we do also with CoLab and with our local authority partners. Employment, so this is about creating employment opportunities for local residents. And this will dovetail into the work that Joy will lead, reporting through to you next week through SPMP, providing an update on the development of the economic wellbeing strategy. So this would be a work stream under that umbrella, also looking at policies that encourage the employment of our local residents within our organisation, but also partnering with other anchors to also advocate for that. This is about us striving to be a high quality employer, an employer of choice, and then advocating to other anchor institutions within Waipa the community wellbeing benefits of employing local. Linked to that is workforce development, and this is about taking action to ensure that our workforce, available workforce, meets the needs of our communities. So through the likes of Mayor's Task Force for Jobs by way of example, but actually building on that offering again to be advanced through the development of the economic wellbeing strategy, facilitating connections with education organisations and industry representatives to identify what is the need, where is the gap, and how are we best placed to fill that. Looking at within our own organisation opportunities for internships and cadetships. Those are programs that are well advanced in other organisations, local government organisations within the Waikato region and beyond. Really looking at ensuring that we are progressive when it comes to our local economy. And then cluster anchor, this is really based around stimulating the growth of related businesses and institutions within our community. So this is looking at building on the work that's undertaken through the development of Ahuaki, the wellbeing strategy, looking at our planning provisions, trying to ensure that we remove obstacles, that we are making it easy to do business with Waipa, that we're looking at those areas of growth around horticulture, ecotourism, cultural tourism, essentially building on what we've heard through our community engagement, partner engagement for Ahuaki. And looking then at opportunities to further build on the work that is being undertaken in partnership with CoLab and, as Gary mentioned, with our partner councils. The final one there, community collaboration, is one that I think there are really exciting opportunities ahead. So acknowledge that there's already significant great work underway, but more that we can be doing in partnership with mana whenua and iwi partners, business community, local government providers, and our community. I think really that the engagement that we undertook through Ahuaki, the World Cafe, that community group, representative of our future Waipa communities, really showed us that there are endless opportunities in this space. So looking there at growing opportunities for enhanced community participation to ensure that there is local voice, choice and control. Gary touched on participatory budgeting, that would be something that would be provided for under this component part of the framework. Also looking at the development of an enhanced community wellbeing program, incorporating all of the 4 wellbeings, looking at initiatives undertaken not only locally but also overseas. And in just a minute, I'm going to talk about one local authority that I had the privilege of being exposed to when I was at that ICMA conference. Super exciting, and if I had my way, we'd all be going to Northern Ireland to have a closer look. But we'll talk about that soon. And then Citizens Learning Program, I have touched on this previously, and this is really around developing a program which shows the insights of working with Waipa District Council and how we work collaboratively with our partners, drilling down into particular aspects of our business, what we do, sharing that with a community group in a structured way with leadership taken by our executive and managers, but really trying to build on that community pride, community ownership, and having the people that come through that program then champion the work of council and anchor institutions and partners within the local community. And being able to access that group then of graduates as we further develop other work programs that they can provide input, insights and knowledge. So also working alongside organisations such as Te Whatu Ora, Mana Whenua Iwi, health agencies and the University of Waikato to progress the development of a localities plan for Waipa. Acknowledge that there is some uncertainty in this space, but there have been conversations undertaken at a staff level with primary health organisation, with Mana Whenua, with representatives from Hauraki that were advanced as one of the trial areas and have developed a plan that is held out as being a good practice example. So it's something that we would be looking to further explore through this framework. So now I'm going to talk to you about Antrim and Newton Abbey Borough Council in Ireland. This is located in Northern Ireland, was established in 2015 as a result of central government reform of local government, and it resulted in the merger of 2 councils. It's recognised as one of the top performing councils in the UK in respect of sustainability, climate change, its utilisation of public spaces and parks. It has a 92% customer satisfaction rate in terms of its overall services. And it's really focused on delivering exceptional outcomes. It recognised that the council needed to be dynamic, it needed to nurture creative approaches to doing its business, and it needed to enter into partnerships and grow those to maximise service delivery. It is a standout performer, and it was truly inspirational sitting and listening to them over 2 sessions. They've agreed a 2025 target of £1 billion investment within their district and the creation of over 3,500 jobs. Prefaced on a close relationship between the economic development staff and their planning team, and about removing obstacles, quick turnaround for the processing of consents to generate wealth and income within their district. When they experienced a skills shortage, they established a labour market partnership, and they reached out to schools at all levels, starting at a primary level right through to secondary, then into tertiary education facilities and then training organisations. I think it's fair to say personally, what excited me most about this council really was what it offered in terms of community wellbeing. And it's worth having a look at the website if you can't quite make it to Northern Ireland. I know Gary's keen to go there when he leaves Waipa and experience it firsthand, but significant community initiatives in terms of a scheme to plant $1 million trees across the borough, working in conjunction with partners, looking at initiatives and funding. A food program, so this, educational programs led by a specialist provided to the community, offering guidance on healthy eating, food safety, food skills, shopping on a budget, food storage, food waste reduction, looking then at community capacity building. So community organisations, upskilling them so that they can be successful when they apply for funding. Ultimately, they're going to be delivering community programs, enhancing community wellbeing. A Live Here, Love Here campaign, which was really focused on growing civic responsibility and community pride. Buddy benches in parks, chatty cafes, and council-funded projects to prevent loneliness. That included working in partnership with other anchors to provide funding for a digital inclusion program, really targeted at those more vulnerable within our community so that they had a point of connection. A Winter Woolies program aimed at keeping people warm over winter, so targeting those community craft groups to come up with product to then share with those vulnerable in the community. There's so much more, but that is what I think we have huge opportunity to explore and expand on within an enhanced community wellbeing program. So that's probably enough on that. And now an opportunity for you to ask questions, provide discussion and feedback around what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to see more or less of. Yeah, and really just to highlight that this is a starting point for discussion with you. And then just in terms of next steps, for us to also then engage with activity managers and technical subject matter experts across the organisation. The intention is to come back to you at the end of March with a formal report, but there is flexibility too with regard to that timing, depending on how much feedback you have for us, what rework there might be required to be undertaken. In terms of the CE KPI, it is aiming for delivery of a completed and approved program by the end of the financial year. So you just want to flag that this is very much a work in progress. It's by no means complete, and there is significant opportunity now for you to input and help to shape this. Thank you.
Wow, that's super exciting. Yeah, so much. The world is kind of our oyster, right? I'm just looking at your Northern Irish example here. Trying to find some relatives. No, just joking. Yeah, like it's kind of almost mind-boggling, isn't it? The world is definitely our oyster. Mike, then Claire, then Andrew.
Thank you through the mayor. Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Kirsty, for your presentation there. I can tell it was obviously exciting, and you're full of vigour, which is awesome, because that's what it takes to actually take something from concept to construct something. What was the size of this borough, just in terms of just trying to get a comparison with Waipa?
So just in terms of population, 145,000.
Right.
So, I think one of the insights for me when I went to this conference was we consider ourselves small, but actually the majority of local authorities represented at the ICMA conference were significantly smaller than Waipa. We are well positioned to make our mark. Yeah.
Right, that was interesting for me to know that, because sometimes being small, you can be more nimble. So it's actually good to know that these folks are over twice the size of us currently. So that's what I've got to say for now. Thank you.
Yeah, look, I just loved what the anchor institution sort of provides as a way of a vision for the future. Yeah, so I was really excited to read the presentation. Congratulations, Gary, on sort of being the torchbearer of it, because I think that its time has arrived really for councils to sort of, I agree that it's some stuff in there we're already doing. It's kind of like I suppose, sharpening the focus and perhaps extending some of the areas that we work in and demonstrating the impact and those outcomes that we're, I suppose, through our actions, we're actually benefiting the wider community and sort of getting our stakeholders to recognise that and to get on board with it too. Yeah, I thought that the slide that shows where the anchor institution framework fits in with our other strategic documents, I thought that the community spatial plan, Ahuaki, is the what that we're all about, and the anchor institution framework is the how we're going to do it. Yeah, I thought that's pretty simple and makes that distinction. I actually read in more depth the work that was done by Peter McKinley, and he had a reference to Manchester City Council, and I read that and how they've used their social impact framework to also drive amazing outcomes. I really support it. I guess I'm really anxious to ensure that any initiatives aren't going to blow our budgets, you know, on other things, that it's done in a way that we can still live within our means. But I think by pursuing those sort of social impacts, we will demonstrate to the community, I suppose those well-beings that we're giving a huge boost to, and that in itself should generate that support and momentum going forward. Yeah, no, loved it. Good on you. Thanks.
Can I just comment clear? So for me, it's more about the why than the what and how. And the why is about, Waipara and building livable communities. It's what our raison d'etre, it's what we're here for. So for me, a lot of this is driven by when you step out of the space of managing back-to infrastructure, and that's the direction we're heading down. Why? Why are you here? What are you trying to do? And so that was a really big driver, because I got a sense that throughout the debate on waters reform, people were struggling to see a purpose for local government or, for individual councils post-water reforms. And there was lots of talk about amalgamation, but actually, that's just continuing down that efficiency slide instead of actually thinking about anchoring your community and trying to build it as a far more livable place.
We'll have to have a discussion on the why or the how, Gary. Must be a coffee or something in there.
Andrew.
Yeah, thanks. I read Peter McKinley's report and the whole thing with interest. To me, this is potentially an antidote for the them and us syndrome that we really have at the moment in not just our district, I think New Zealand as a whole, with local government in particular. If done right, we remove the them and it's all us, which is where we want to go. I read Peter McKinley's, one of the things he says, clearly the UK and America are quite different in how local government operates, and we're different again. That came through. And he had a quote from the Cleveland saying that the need to maintain political and geographic neutrality may prevent a city government from acting as lead convener of a major anchor initiative. Why does that not apply to us? Or maybe the question should be, why does that apply to them? Do you have a thought about that?
I guess by and large, councils in New Zealand are, agnostic from a political point of view. So it's not like we're driving a left-wing or right-wing agenda. It's just that we're here for social, environmental, community outcomes.
Philip.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. That's pretty impressive with that borough in Ireland to have such a high satisfaction rate. It's really impressive. So it's really cool. How many, 2 quick questions, how many do any other boroughs or councils in New Zealand have introduced this or aware of implemented this?
Yeah, so I've been talking to a few who are interested in going down this path. So there are none that I'm aware of. I mean, there are various spatial plans, but Ahuaki is really about all 4 community wellbeing and looking to not just give our council a lens into what the community outcomes are or need to be, but also it provides a lens for regional government and central government as well. So done well, Ahuaki is all about working for the same community and leveraging resources from other anchors as best we can to deliver the outcomes our communities want. So yeah, local government is so dashed busy dealing with process around long-term plans and district plan changes and all of that land transport stuff that I think we fail to see the woods for the trees. And so to cut your head free to get into this sort of headspace, you've really got to try and push to one side all that process stuff that we're very busy doing. I mean, the minute you folk get elected to a council, we've got you on that hamster mill of a long-term plan. And suddenly you're sort of captured by process as opposed to what your communities actually want. And so Ahuaki is about trying to give you the power and the engagement tools to work with your communities to deliver that stuff.
I'll look forward to learning more about it and seeing your report in a month's time, Thank you.
Lou, then Roger, then Marcus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very, very supportive of this. I think that this is quite an innovative idea. I want to congratulate both Gary and Kirsty for their presentation. Well done. My feeling here is that we have a situation where we're reversing a little bit of what we've had for the last 6 years of centralisation and the large industries coming into our area. We have seen in many cases with industry coming here, for example, just take a simple thing such as our supermarkets, where they do employ people locally. However, they import a lot of this product from well outside our areas. I'm just using that as an example. I could look at where we're looking at the situation of, say, workforce development, where we actually can target our schools and everybody and actually prepare people to actually participate within our own community in the jobs that are going to be there for them. And I think that's something that's been a little disconnect over the years. And the cluster anchor led initiative, where you've got an industry, let's just take the honey industry, for example, that we've got in town. You know, that is quite an important industry, and how that developed and all of the subsequent industries that develop around it. That is critical. We seem to have lost that somewhere in the uptake. You know, I used to be, perhaps I'm an old man, but go down to the local soap and down to the local sale yard as a farmer. And I used to stand there and I'd see the local butcher purchasing local animals to go to the local fields. I know we can't possibly go back completely to that. However, that supported all those local industries. And that's what I'm saying. I think that's the key thing of this objective. And I'm very, 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 very keen to support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Roger, then Marcus.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think there's some really interesting concepts in here, and I particularly like the move on participatory democracy and budgeting, and I think that will be an exciting area to get into. I just wanted to develop a better understanding in my own mind as to anchor institutions and examples of anchor institutions that we perhaps have within Waipa. And from what I'm understanding, I mean, we as a council have got governance over the direction of our own resource allocation that helps us towards these 4 well-beings. So does other anchor institution within Waipa need to have that localized governance and direction over assets and resource allocation? Or can it, I can't see how it can be a branch or a unit of some other national organization or entity where they're faced with a different set of priorities than perhaps a localized allocation within Waipa. Can you further explain that to me and maybe give me examples of where anchor institutions in Waipa would be identified?
Well, I guess if you think about the health locality plans that we're required to have input into, Te Whatu Ora have signalled an intention to pass responsibility for preparing those plans to iwi or iwi authorities or iwi health authorities. For one reason or another, that's struggled to gain traction, notwithstanding a willingness on everyone's part to make that work. So what we've talked about with iwi and with Waikato University, who are interested in health outcomes and equity in health outcomes. We're interested in social and cultural well-being and building livable places. So you start to think about partnering with two anchors, Waikato Tainui and Waikato University and Waipa, who share similar outcomes. And so suddenly it just doesn't become an issue about Te Whatu Ora trying to deliver something, but it's also joining up with iwi, Waikato University and Waipa District Council, all of which have impacts on health outcomes for its community. Well, but critically, Roger, if we've got Ahuaki and we know what outcomes our community is looking to deliver, we can find similarities and continue those up.
So an anchor institution could, as you've mentioned, could be outside the bounds of Waipa as a district, but have a designated interest within Waipa.
I absolutely agree with that, and look at what does it contribute to our community. Is it a large employer? Does it have a large land holding, large assets? You know, what is the level of interest in giving back to the community? It could be through an environmental program, it could be a planting regime, it could be, you know, a financial offering, it could be around and just in terms of, you know, providing assistance to their employees to be able to purchase their own homes. There's lots of potential. So I don't think that we can say we're not going to have conversations with organisations that are part of a national chain or group.
Marcus.
Yeah, this sounds really exciting, and I think it's something that, you know, we do need to get into engaging with our public and communities and stronger. Like we've got groups like ConnexU and Fonterra and things, but I'm just worried that, you know, this kind of has come up in the past, but are we resourced enough to be able to actually give full value to this and actually carry it forward in the future? Because it's all very well having it on paper, but the execution on it, I think, needs to be like on point. And, you know, I'm kind of seeing that already in the community space with like what Gina's role is, linking our community groups together. But so this is like an expanded version of that, is it?
So I'm not suggesting we spend any more money than we're spending now, Marcus. In fact, looking to spend our money more effectively, not just in council's interest, but in the community interest. I mean, we're garnering from our ratepayers 90 odd million a year in rates. And somehow we owe it to them to try and return that money to the Waipa economy instead of paying it to larger external entities, not just external to Waipa, but external to New Zealand. So you start to think about how can you make the economy work better with the money you've got. That's why I talked about our procurement process in the Section 17A process. So there are, you'll be able to look at each of these initiatives, particularly Newton Antrim Abbey, in light of Ahuaki, and you'll just have to weigh up those business cases. So this is about a framework for the years ahead. This isn't something that is necessarily going to happen now. These Section 17A reviews will roll out over the next 5 years.
Monty and then Bruce.
Yeah, right. There's quite a bit in here I quite like, and there's some that I don't. Okay, and it's quite hard to get your head around listening to it, to be honest, because it's quite a sort of amorphous concept to grab hold of. And so I feel like a bit of a Grinch, but I wouldn't want to see this be an attempt to become all things to all people. Okay, and that sort of seems to me a risk in this. And I'll pick an example in your pie chart. Workforce development. It's one that just jumps out at me. Back in the day, I used to run a water business, and we used to love employing Waipa District Council's water people because they were proper apprentices. They'd gone through a proper apprenticeship. They were brilliantly trained. They were just awesome. And but for me, that was an anchor institution. You know, that you're getting local people. You were training them up really, really well. They were high skilled. They were great. And you know, in the picture you've painted of this sort of slide to down the efficiency scale, a lot of that kind of stuff is just being contracted out. You know, you just contract in experts all the time. So perhaps that's an example where you know, your water apprenticeships, great. I'm into that. Trying to go out and starting to do workforce development for third-party industries that you might be hoping are going to be winners in Waipa. Probably not. That's probably too far for me. So kind of as a lens to think about how we operate as a council, I get it. Or maybe the lens is better than the framework. Like it's a lens that we view stuff through. I sort of get that. But I'll be a constant critic of the business cases that we're not trying to spread ourselves too thin, be all things to all people, and kind of just kind of stray too far. But at the same time, I hear what you're saying, that the well-beings, you know, we're here for the well-beings, but we need discipline about the projects, the business cases and so on we pick. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's me.
In terms of workforce development, you think about the amount of money we're spending in the community, and if you're to let a contract where you know there's a skills shortage locally, and the sort of influence that Joy can bring to bear when she goes to work with that contractor through that procurement process to talk about these are some more outcomes we would like in the interests of the Waipa community if we're awarding this contract to you. So it's not necessarily saying that we will train these people ourselves. It's actually about influencing, using our financial muscle to influence outcomes on behalf of the community.
Yeah, okay. We're probably agreeing. And it has kind of been striking to me that sometimes you do feel like this place is just a clearinghouse for contracts, that, you know, you're just collecting the rates and letting everything. And yeah, the sort of excessive use of contractors, you feel that a little bit, and you do wonder what you could bring in-house. And that is part of this analysis. So yeah, basically agreeing, but I'll continue to cast a sceptical eye over every project.
So Mike, when you think about all of the stuff that we've contracted out, part of that Section 17A lens is about looking at the stuff that you can cost effectively bring in-house in the interests of, you know, training people that will deliver to the local economy. So rather than us doling out money for contractors, in the interest of maintaining capacity in this organisation and attracting smart people and doing all these smart strategies, there are opportunities to think about building the capacity within this organisation. That's something for, you know, a new chief executive to think about, but it's just part of the framework that we'd like to put on the table for you to consider.
Oh, Bruce, then Dale Marie, then Andrew.
Kirsty, with relation to your favourite council in Ireland, who have got we've got half their population, but 3 times the land area. How critical is that to being an anchor institution being successful, with the extra land able to be utilised or made of benefit to us? Because they're 571 square kilometres, we're 1,400, let's say 1,500. Bigger, much bigger area to do things.
I don't think it's a case of size matters, to be honest. And look, one of the key points to make is this isn't about council delivering this in and of itself. That's, that's what we've learned through Ahawaki. The whole point of this is around collaboration with public organisations and private. I guess what that land hold or that land size does provide is huge opportunity in terms of industries that are able to be located here. It also provides significant opportunity in terms of our natural landscape, in terms of that ecotourism, cultural tourism. So, I mean, there is a lot sitting here that in terms of value add for Waipa. Yeah, certainly our size is not prohibitive in participating in this space.
Delmarie.
No mai hoki mai. Good to see you back with us and over your mawiriwitanga. And tēnā korua kia korua mō tēnei kaupapa. Yeah, I had a look online for about 3 hours last night looking at anchor institutions, and I'm kind of a little bit like Monty, I'm on the line at the moment because it sounds great. Intent is good. And that's probably the same place my tupuna were in 1840 when they signed something. So intent looks good, but every time I put iwi, mana whenua Māori into some of these documents, it's like Peter's report, it comes up once. So I'm just a little bit concerned that we, as iwi that have these fundamental partnerships within, will be, subsumed into another gap. And further to that, just looking at how things are being rolled out from Wellington at the moment, I don't have confidence that with what we have to react to and respond to from Wellington, we're actually not on a focus of well-being at the moment with what they're doing. That's my own opinion. And for someone who sits in an Indigenous space, Māori and Pacifica are getting kicked to bits at the moment from Wellington. So I'm a little bit, it sounds and looks lovely. And of course, I've always got hope, and I'm always at the table around faith, around where iwi will always come to the table to look at how we can progress together. But yeah, the concerns are always the same, but I do have to wonder, okay, I'm really glad, Gary, you said there isn't any additional cost, because I was like, oh, what? How much is this going to cost? And then we're going to have to create the capacity are we having to roll that out? And then I hear sort of that we are rolling out, and yes, we are with regards to Ahuaki, but did we have to find a person to be the person that will lead this out? So yeah, just mindful, we hear one hand, we've got to save money and all of this stuff. And I'm not convinced that Wellington is about our well-being. They're about a lot of profit and a lot of stuff like that at the moment. So yeah, but I do like the intent, because well-being's always up on my list. So kia ora tātou.
So Dale, for every dollar we spend on our community, central government in Waipa spends about 9. That's not channeled in any way by our citizens. We're both working for the same community. And so the whole idea about Ahuaki is to give central government and regional government a lens into the Waipa community in the interest of delivering the outcomes our community wants. The problem with responding to Wellington is essentially that's what we've always done. And so notwithstanding the Local Government Act is probably one of the most enabling bits of legislation anywhere in the world, subject to these powers of general competence, subject to process. And it's the process that I think is getting in the way of delivering good community outcomes, because we spend forever doing LTPs and district plan changes, and that's really tough. So the notion here is to try and reduce that trend to get back closer to our community as opposed to getting closer to Wellington and getting our community's voice heard. So that's what Ahuaki is about. it's then about how can we engage with other anchors and, being able to, in the iwi space, connect Waikato University up with iwi and our own spatial planning network to deliver outcomes, I think is a really solid opportunity we need to pursue, just by way of example.
Thanks, Gary. Andrew, then Mike.
Yes. So I'm going to get down to sort of a little bit more specifics here, which is, not necessarily where this is about, but I really like the idea of bringing our maintenance team, parks and reserves and all that kind of thing in-house. And I liken it a little bit to my own business. We have an opportunity to either contract out our deliveries or do them in-house. Doing them in-house is a pain in the backside at times, but by being in-house, we have the opportunity to influence the experience our customers have far more than when a contractor does it. And if we get it wrong, then it really kicks back onto us, which is where it should do, and then we can. But getting it right is A, about the culture of the business, and B, about the appointments that you make and the training you give. We don't control what our delivery guy does. That would be that's not what the role is about. The role is about creating the opportunity for him to do it well, and so I know you guys get that, so that's fine. The only other one is a little bit of a plea. When it comes to rubbish and recycling, for God's sake, they need to be part of the anchor institution, whether it's we deliver it directly, but at the moment, our community does not own rubbish and recycling. To them, it's that's over there, and we'll chuck our rubbish where we want to, and all the rest of it. When you look at what's happening in Raglan, effectively that's a little anchor institution of its own. It's an employer of choice, all that good stuff, and they're getting great outcomes. So yep.
Good observations, Andrew. Mike.
Yeah, thanks for letting me out. Just a comment off the back of Andrew's, and then a question maybe for either of you. I guess just coming in from Andrew, it's that developing culture, and I can see that this would be amazing to actually drive culture of what Waipa is and being involved in Waipa and genuinely feeding into your community and feeling valued about that. And it's harder to do when you outsource it to a delivery company or outsource it to someone else, because they're looking after the culture of their company first and foremost before they're thinking of Waipa. And picking up on your point, Gary, that some of the money stays in Waipa, out of Waipa, or overseas, and rubbish is probably a good example of that. Some of us employ companies where the money goes to overseas, over to Asia, etc. So I do like that whole putting the lens over what makes sense and not just everything. My question is, you sort of made comments about this Antrim and Newton Abbey borough, and they made consent and they made business easy. And I think if we can make business easier, that's a fantastic thing. But my question is, how do you, let's take consenting, because a lot of people come across consenting in one way or the other. How do you make it easier when you still have to comply with national legislation? So if we take building, I don't want to do something easy like dog registration, but something like the building process, some big stuff where to bring business in, how do we have you put any thought around there, make life easier? Or some concepts?
Yeah, building consents. We're audited by IANZ around the tick boxes we have to go through. It makes it quite tough. But partnering up with other councils through CoLab, looking at making things as smooth as we can. One of the biggest impediments to getting really quick building consent through the process is the quality of information that comes into the consent process. So a major focus, I think, through CoLab will be, bringing the practitioners up to speed with how to lodge a fully complete application. Now, the big guys do that really well because they're well resourced. So it's about trying to get alongside the folks who aren't so good, because so much of the building consent team's time is spent taking an application from scratch and working with the applicant to get it in a shape that will pass the minimum test set by IAC. So it's a real focus on the folks out there who are making the applications.
Right, so that's a great example of just straight away you've got some ideas around some big ticket stuff that something like this could actually bring around efficiency and making life easier. Would it be more staff as well, or the rest of it? But those are the sorts of things where I'm actually really excited about this, and knowing that the staff will bring back and doing the research, I guess, on what makes sense, which can be brought in-house. And I really like that participatory, but ahuaki type thing, getting people together. Oh, Billy Tiwa, yeah. Because I can think of some projects where I don't know if they'd be in our 10-year plan, to be honest, if we'd gone that way 3 years ago. I think they were pushed from us, and I say us as a collective, from staff to councillors, of stuff that's in the LTP that might have been sitting at 50-55% in terms of public support and should have really been in there. So I think it's going to change if we go down this. It'll change the landscape of what a 10-year plan will look like and what's going to be deliverable in it. And it'll be far more than just what the public see at the moment, which are really projects. It's not really interested in infrastructure. It'll be more than projects. It'll be how we're involving council and everything else with the community. So I'm glass half full on this.
Yeah, so Mike, the big building blocks are in place, the procurement process, the Section 17A process. We've dipped our toe in the water with participatory democracy. We're looking possibly at a budgeting process that we can work with the community on. So those big building blocks are there. The rest is how we do stuff, and it's the outcomes you're looking to deliver. That's why it's all stitched within our existing strategic framework. This isn't about doing new stuff, it's about doing stuff differently.
Claire and then Liz.
Yeah, really I'm pleased to hear that the how of it is getting a bit more prominence. I just wanted to comment on two things. Firstly, about the spend that's in the community. So in the Manchester City example, they not only identified the amount of council's budget that was spent with their top 300 suppliers and, that were from their community, they also analysed how much spend of their contractors was actually also within their community. So you're kind of getting a larger scope. And that in itself, simply by measuring that amount, it stimulated, to try and do that. And with trend reporting, you could see how over time, and it was actually not only within the Manchester City, but within deprived neighbourhoods as well. Yeah, so it was quite interesting, actually. The thing that I wanted to sort of put on my final comment was it's suggested in the presentation we were circulated with that we look at working on that Te Whatu Ora localities proposal. So I'm not convinced that that's actually going to proceed. And I felt if there was a project, a flagship project for this anchor institution, I want it to be affordable housing. It came through strongly with Ahuaki as well. And I don't want to see us tread water for 12 months while we work out whether or not the health reforms are actually going to take shape as the previous government sort of talked about, or we'll say, look, this is something that came through really strongly with our communities and we're going to, that's our number one. And that's what I'd love to see. Thanks.
Thanks, Claire. Liz.
There's been some great conversations around the table today. Really, really good conversations. I guess for me personally, this is a really big shift change. And I guess it's kind of where we were 30 years ago. This is clawing back, creating the communities, the sense of communities that we probably had back then, but for lots of good reasons have kind of, moved in, well, we've all made decisions for the best intent of our communities. I'm probably a little bit skeptical, only because, again, it's probably that scope. And I feel really strongly that our communities need to have a really big say around how far we go with this. I'm also really mindful around sort of stepping on other people's toes, like Te Whatu Ora, making sure we don't overstep, that we are working collaboratively. Because I think that there is potentially, what has been largely a lot of their role in the past, we could be potentially overstepping. I don't know. I mean, this is about creating better communities. I've always felt strongly that we needed to be playing in this space anyway, and in the past been told, well, it's a central government function, stay out. It's not council core business. But to create good communities, we need to be in that social space. I've always felt strongly around that. So look, overall, I'm really supportive of this. But if we're going to have, if there are decisions around which directions we go, I really want to see a strong elected membership committee or whatever, so that we're working this hard and being really strategic about the places we play in and the places that we don't. We can't do all of it in a year or 2 or 3. This is going to take quite a lot of time. So I just want to make sure we're close to the action the whole way through.
So just a couple of things in response to that, Liz, thank you for that feedback. Just talking with Gary then, in terms of coming back to you, I think it might be helpful if we also identify what's already underway or in progress, and then, what we've done, I guess, with the housing implementation plan, what would be something new, and then for feedback around prioritisation. But notwithstanding that, Ahuaki, as you're aware, will go through a special consultative procedure on the substantive plan, and we're just looking at some advice and options currently around timing, depending on how we're progressing with the long-term plan, whether we remain on track and the substantive plan and the implementation plan are consulted on together, or whether they're actually split out. But that implementation plan certainly also provides an opportunity for community input in terms of particular work programs, projects, initiatives.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsty. Look, really, really interesting points of view coming out. I guess right at the beginning, I wrote, as innovative as this concept is, it's sort of a little bit of back to the future in a way. But it does, in my mind, address the real issues, and accepts there's that process there, but it's addressing those real issues, which is, to your point, Liz, about probably the areas that we've been told isn't our sandpit to play in. But ultimately, it is about people and how they want to live. And it's sort of just beyond infrastructure, I guess. It's sort of how I kind of see it. But I totally hear your word of warning. We can't be all things to all people. So that's where that understanding from our communities as to what we want, how we want this to look in Waipa is crucial. Which parts do we want to address? And how can we partner and facilitate and collaborate with existing organisations, not work in competition, but facilitate better alignment and delivery of those services, I guess. So there's a lot there, an awful lot there. Almost could be overwhelming, but I think we have to be really quite disciplined as to what this would look like in Waipa.
So yeah, there's a bunch there, and that was deliberate, because this is about painting a picture for the future. It's not something you need to be right there next year or the year after, but it gives you an idea of what I imagine the future to be for local government. And it's something that you will put a tentative toe in the water on. You'll get feedback from your community, and if you like it and it likes it, you'll move to the next step. So much the same as what we've done with participatory democracy, you could then start to look at participatory budgeting. And let's just test these strategies as we go and make sure you're getting the right community outcomes before you go and like doggy do. And this is about a vision for the future. It's a framework to work towards. It's not a hard and fast plan.
Yeah, and look, thanks, Gary. I think that puts my mind at ease a little bit. And I absolutely acknowledge that quite a lot of this is already underway. I think about our procurement policy, for example, around going local. That's already out there. We probably just need to drive it harder. I'm not too sure that, everyone knows that we already choose to stay local wherever possible. So no, I think I feel really good about this.
Fantastic. Any other closing comments or questions for the dynamic duo there?
Through, Madam Mayor, just take
Luke.
one thing. I think everybody's got to realise that we've had a disconnect with everybody over the last 6 years. I want to mention this, particularly with COVID. Central government actually replaced us for everything and became the star of all of our conversations. We were set to lockdowns, we were set to vaccines, everybody resisted that. And there is out there a disconnect to local government because of that. And that is something that we've got to rebuild again, that connection between the local body and our community. That was lost. We sat down and listened to Jacinda Ardern every day at midday or whatever it was, and the podium of truth. And that has impacted with us. And it has impacted with our public. And I want to see what we had, and I just read this immediately after I've been speaking to you, and we will progress development of a citizens learning program directed to building a strong sense of civic responsibility. And just finally to add to everything, I don't want to sort of target things. I agree with your housing, but we've got to look at it wider. This is not actually just us funding something differently. Like, for example, take urban miners. Now, we've got a thing at urban miners, we collect e-waste. Okay, that has actually reached its maximum. That is going to have to step up another step at some point in time. That actually operates within our community, employs a lot of people, not with funds at the moment, but will do. It can take e-waste. It's now taking in all of the air conditioning units. We're starting to really look at what we can do there. And as I say, all it needs is our staff and everybody to be aware of them and allow them to be able to progress that even further, so that all those e-waste collected laptops now sold at the market, the Lions Market in Cambridge or in Te Awamutu, and we can use that. So I'm very keen to see this progressing along, very confident. I think that we do need to, but as I agree with Liz and I agree with others, we have to do it with caution. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Well, I think, did you want to have a final closing comment, or should we leave it there?
Oh, no, I mean, this is the part of local government that really excites a lot of us. And look, you hear about the satisfaction ratings that and New Zealand local government generally is at the opposite end of that paradigm, isn't it? So we've got to do something different, and just doing what we've always done is just going to get the same results. So look, I'm enthusiastic about this. I think staff are pretty enthusiastic about it. I think the trick is, to your point, Liz, is taking the community with us in small steps.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting.
Exactly.
And that brings to an end our workshop day, I believe. So thank you